My deskmate was famously an aloof heartthrob, one who fought viciously and never gave anyone a serious glance. I always trod carefully around him, fearing I might accidentally provoke him. But one day, when I returned to the school after classes, the classroom, which should have been deserted, was filled with the usual unruly crowd. My aloof deskmate sat right in the center, a smug expression plastered across his face. What's there to brag about? Not even as beautiful as my Annie Carter. I stood frozen at the doorway, not daring to interrupt his boastful display. Because I was Annie Carter. Early that morning, I arrived at class extra early, hoping to quickly finish breakfast before my deskmate arrived. Otherwise, once he was there, I wouldn't even dare to speak loudly, much less eat. My deskmate, Ryan Tate, was smart, from a good family, and possessed a face so stunning it could anger gods and mortals. Yet he was famously cold. For 2 years as deskmates, he had never once looked at me with a normal gaze. He was truly terrifying. Whenever someone asked me to pass him a love letter, he would pause his writing, his cold eyes fixed on me, fingers tapping a rhythm on the desktop, as if issuing a silent warning. Dare you accept it? Moreover, he seemed to suffer from OCD. His desk was always neater than even a girl's, like mine. He gave me the impression of a celestial deity existing in a different realm from us, mere mortals, and looking down on everyone. In short, I didn't even dare to speak much to him. While Ryan Tate hadn't arrived, I had to quickly finish my egg. The moment I peeled the egg and took a bite, someone gently nudged my chair with their foot. A familiar yet chilling voice emanated from above my head. Slide your chair over. I instinctively looked up, half an egg still in my mouth. Ryan Tate stood beside me, hands in his pockets, his face expressionless. He sat on the inner side, I on the outer, and he was waiting for me to make way for him to get to his seat. I frantically sprang to my feet, hastily making way for him. I didn't dare to keep him waiting. But before I could swallow the egg, I choked. I awkwardly thumped my chest, but Ryan Tate remained expressionless. He simply raised a hand, unhurriedly opened the lid of his thermos, and extended it towards me. Without a second thought, I instinctively took it and gulped down some water, genuinely terrified of choking to death and ending up on the news. Ryan Tate's voice, laced with disdain, sounded in my ear. You can even choke on an egg? That was it, I'd earned his disdain. I cautiously eyed him, meekly explaining, I was afraid you'd have to wait, so I ate a bit too quickly. Ryan Tate subtly furrowed his brow. It suddenly dawned on me that I had just drunk water from his thermos? Oh no! Why did I drink his water? I bit my lip, unsure how to begin apologizing. Seeing Ryan Tate still waiting, I hastily stepped aside for him to take his seat. He said nothing, simply stepped in and sat down. I, meanwhile, stood beside him, meticulously wiping his thermos over and over again. You despise me? Ryan Tate's voice suddenly cut through the silence, making me jump. No, not at all. I just wanted to wipe it clean for you. I waved my hands frantically. I truly don't despise you. Ryan Tate said nothing, simply observing me in silence. Sure enough, my deskmate was as aloof as ever. Clutching the thermos, I was momentarily at a loss. Finally, I gritted my teeth and handed it to him. Student Tate, do you still need this? I wasn't sure if I was mistaken, but his gaze lingered on the mouth of the thermos for a few seconds. He looked down, his eyes darkening, and after a long moment, he said in a low voice, No need to return it. Having said that, he no longer looked at me, instead lowering his head to flip through the thick physics textbook on his desk. I glanced at the book cover. He truly was brilliant, already delving into university-level physics, while I still struggled with high school physics. Student Tate, I'm truly sorry about today. Rest assured I'll buy you a new thermos to replace it. Ryan Tate didn't lift his head, merely spitting out 2 frigid words. No need. I stood there, utterly dumbfounded, filled with regret. This was it. I'd definitely offended the school's big brother. I'd heard he was an exceptional fighter. I'd heard that last semester, a gang of delinquents had ambushed him, only to be utterly thrashed by him, cornered in an alley, and beaten until they couldn't stand. I was utterly terrified. For the entire following week, I lived in anxiety. I didn't even dare to hand him the new thermos I'd bought. But it seemed Ryan Tate hadn't given the incident a second thought. His attitude towards me remained as usual, taciturn and indifferent. I passed the week in peace, with no further incidents. By the weekend, my phone pinged with a message from my best friend, Lily Chen. "Annie Carter, save me. Are you free? Please help me draw the school's notice board. I've got a fever, please." I held my phone and considered it for a moment. I wasn't bad at drawing, after all. So I immediately messaged back, "Okay, you just focus on recovering. I'll take care of it." The day was beautiful, the sun not too harsh, and the wind rustling through the leaves created a soothing sound. Carrying my bag, I intended to head to the classroom to sketch first. It was Saturday, so the classroom was sure to be empty, allowing me to draw in peace. But the moment I reached the classroom door, I froze. The room was packed with the school's notorious troublemakers, the kind even teachers couldn't handle. They were chatting idly, debating which female celebrity was the most beautiful. I knew these were all rich kids. They probably met celebrities at their own parties regularly. And in the very center of the group sat my aloof deskmate, a look of utter smugness on his face. What's there to brag about? Not even as beautiful as my Annie Carter. I stood rooted to the spot outside the door, not daring to interrupt his bragging. Because I was Annie Carter, a male student asked curiously, "Brother Ryan, Annie Carter is your deskmate, right?" Ryan Tate leisurely crossed his legs, an unlit cigarette clipped between his fingers, an utterly arrogant expression on his face. "That's right, my deskmate. She's a good girl." In that moment, I had the bizarre sensation that he was completely different from the aloof person I encountered daily. If not for his face, I would have thought I was looking at the wrong person. Suddenly, another male student's gaze darted to the classroom door. He then smirked mischievously, his voice lazy as he drawled, "Brother Ryan, are you talking about the girl who usually wears her hair in a small bun and carries a cream-colored backpack?" Ryan Tate's expression grew even more smug, tinged with a hint of pride. "Exactly. She looks very well behaved." After saying that, as if a thought suddenly struck him, he raised his foot and kicked the other guy. "How do you know that? I'm warning you. Don't get any ideas." The male student chuckled, dodging to the side, then raised his hand and pointed straight at the classroom door, where I stood. "Brother Ryan, how could I possibly have any ideas about your woman? But hey, I just saw Annie Carter with my own 2 eyes, Ryan Tate replied indifferently. "What? Is she still standing right outside the door?" The male student's grin widened naughtily. "Who knows?" Ryan Tate suddenly froze. He put out his cigarette, took his feet off the table, and slowly turned his head. And his gaze met mine. 1 second. 2 seconds. The entire classroom fell dead silent. Not a single person uttered a word. This situation was incredibly awkward. Should I say something to ease the atmosphere? I clutched my bag strap, then hesitantly spoke. "Hello, Student Tate." Ryan Tate flinched slightly, then mumbled something under his breath. I strained to listen, only then realizing he was muttering, "I'm finished. I'm dead. This is the end." I stood frozen outside the door, not daring to move. But just a second later, Ryan Tate instantly regained his cool demeanor, stood up, and left the classroom. Yet I clearly saw his ears were flushed. As he passed by the male student from earlier, he swung his leg and kicked him, gritting his teeth. "Your big mouth truly ruined me. I'm completely screwed because of you." The male student clutched his butt and yelped, an innocent look on his face. "Brother Ryan, I only wanted to help you. You've been pretending to be aloof for 2 years now." But Ryan Tate didn't reply. He didn't even dare to look at me once. He, a renowned big brother within the school, was now hastily fleeing like a defeated coward. That night, when I had finished drawing the notice board and was home, lying on my bed, I slowly came to a startling realization. My deskmate wasn't aloof at all? He was just pretending, and had been pretending for 2 years? Why? I tossed and turned on my bed, unable to make sense of it. Could it be he actually liked me? Impossible! I quickly denied it to myself. He and I were from entirely different worlds, but I suddenly remembered that everyone in that class today were problem students, so unruly that even the teachers couldn't control them. Yet, they all seemed to revere and obey Ryan Tate. I stood up, leaning against the balcony railing, letting the night wind ruffle my hair. I looked up at the night sky, unusually full of stars tonight. Unbidden, I remembered the first time I met Ryan Tate. Back then, it was the first day of 10th grade, the first day of high school, a complete new beginning from junior to senior high. Everyone was excited about everything. I tied my hair into a high ponytail, wore a pair of clean white shoes, and had a strawberry-shaped hair clip. But my first day encountered a minor mishap. That day, I walked into Class 3 and stopped at a seat near the window. I chose the outer seat, and after arranging my things, I conveniently wiped clean the inner desk, the spot I'd saved for Lily Chen, who was also in Class 3. But just as I finished wiping, a large shadow fell over me. I looked up. In front of me was the fat boy, drenched in sweat. I hadn't even had time to say, "Classmate, this seat is taken," when he immediately threw his backpack onto the inner desk. I frowned slightly and politely explained, but he didn't bother to listen, even aggressively telling me to move aside, saying he wanted to sit there. He was tall and large, covered in sweat. I stammered, unable to get a word out, my face burning hot. I was both afraid he'd slap me to the ground and unwilling for him to become my deskmate. So, even though my legs were trembling, I still stood perfectly straight, not moving an inch. He frowned, asking why I wouldn't give up the seat. I whispered, "Classmate, you won't fit." Seeing his increasingly annoyed expression, I immediately regretted it terribly. I must have hurt his self-esteem. Only one thought remained in my mind. Please, oh heavens, someone, anyone, please come save me. And then, Ryan Tate appeared. As the male student and I were in a standoff, he strode in with a cold demeanor, his face so unfairly handsome it would provoke envy in gods and men. I just saw him with a flick of his wrist, and thud, the fat boy's backpack was instantly sent to the ground. A deep voice rang out, "The inner seat is mine. Move aside." The entire classroom immediately turned its attention to us. Only then did I vaguely realize he seemed to be very popular. I had thought the fat boy would argue with Ryan Tate, but surprisingly, Ryan Tate completely disregarded him. He just gave a dismissive glance, his gaze indifferent. "What? Any objections?" And the male student fell silent, not daring to utter a single word, quietly leaving. Ryan Tate's gaze rested on me. I numbly stepped aside, watching him calmly sit down. I didn't dare to breathe because his aura was too terrifying. 85 meters tall, he wore a simple white t-shirt, yet exuded a haughty and devil-may-care air, even more intimidating than the male student from before. "Annie Carter, don't be afraid. This will be your deskmate from now on. It's okay, he can't punch you to death." I hesitated for a long time, finally bravely extended my hand, and softly introduced myself. "Classmate, hello. My name is Annie Carter, and the Can in my family name is from Mok Can Hua, Rose of Sharon hibiscus." Ryan Tate didn't look up, merely pulling out a thick physics book. Just as I thought he wouldn't answer, a cold voice rang out. Ryan Tate." I secretly wiped a bead of sweat. Goodness, he's so cold. Later, I found out he was none other than Ryan Tate, the citywide top scorer in the junior high school entrance exam. Mean City No. 1 High School was the best high school in Mean City. Students there were either children of wealthy and influential families or those with outstanding academic achievements. I belonged to the second group. My family wasn't well off, but my parents loved me very much. My father worked as a factory worker, while my mother stayed home to take care of the family. I wanted my parents to be able to live a better life later on, so I studied extremely hard, not daring to slack off for a single moment. The day I got into Mean City No. 1 High School, my parents were so overjoyed they almost set off firecrackers to celebrate. They both laughed and praised me. "Our Annie is so clever," while discussing buying me new clothes, fearing I'd be looked down on by my classmates at school. I smiled and told them, "There's no need. Lily Chen has a lot of clothes she doesn't wear anymore, and they're all still very new. I can just wear hers. If you really want to buy something, please buy it for yourselves." How long has it been since you bought new clothes? My parents' eyes reddened, and they said emotionally, "How can our daughter be so thoughtful?" The tuition fees at Mian City No. 1 High School were very expensive. Fortunately, I got a full scholarship, so I didn't need to worry about the tuition costs. But in reality, Mian City No. 1 High School was a hub for many talented individuals. The academic performance of the students here was in a completely different league compared to the junior high school I had attended. Mian City No. 1 High School divided classes by academic performance. I was placed in Class 3, while Class 2 was filled with excellent students, and Class 1 was for geniuses among geniuses. That's why, even now, I still can't understand why Ryan Tate was in Class 3. Every time he took an exam, he effortlessly ranked first in the entire grade, as if he was just casually doing the test. With such results, he should have rightfully been in Class 1. Ryan Tate hadn't come to class for 3 days. Ever since that awkward encounter, he hadn't appeared for 3 days. During these 3 days, I felt incredibly out of sorts. Although I always tiptoed around him, careful not to say anything that might offend the school's big brother, when he wasn't around, I felt a strange emptiness. Because, as long as he was next to me, my thermos was always full of water. Even though Ryan Tate was very cold, and almost no one in class dared to talk to him, if I just slightly frowned over a difficult math problem, he would silently pick up my exercise book to examine it. Ryan Tate's hands were beautiful, each joint distinct, slender yet powerful. Sometimes, when he was explaining a problem to me, I couldn't help but stare blankly at his hands. Every time that happened, he would raise his hand and gently pat the back of my head, a cold voice resonating. "Focus." He was very tall, but he always seemed to have a habit of leaning down to listen to me speak. Every time that happened, my gaze would linger on the sharp lines of his chin. Clearly, this was a cold face, yet at times it appeared strangely gentle. He hadn't come to class for 3 days. I wonder if it was because he was embarrassed after that encounter. I thought of the scene that day, when I caught him bragging, and he was so flustered he ran away. Thinking this, I couldn't help but sigh. He must have felt so embarrassed that he didn't want to be my deskmate anymore. I unconsciously blamed myself. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone back to the classroom to draw the display board that day, and this wouldn't have happened. But reality proved I had been overthinking. On the 4th day, Ryan Tate returned. It turned out that he had been out participating in the national physics competition for the past 3 days and had easily won the championship. I breathed a sigh of relief. As long as he wasn't avoiding me, that's all that mattered. But then, he had returned, but I had already been moved to a different seat. Lily Chen broke her leg. When she called me to inform me, her voice was sobbing uncontrollably, utterly heartbroken. "Annie Carter, I don't want to live anymore," I hurriedly asked. "What's wrong? Don't cry anymore. Tell me slowly," Lily Chen said, choking back tears, word by word. "I fell while bathing. But I fell so hard I broke a bone. I'm truly the unluckiest person in the world. Before, a bird flying overhead even deliberately pooped on my head. I could endure all of that. But why am I so unlucky that right after recovering from a fever, I broke my leg? I was clearly about to return to school, and now, just great, I have to stay home again. There's so much homework, I'll definitely fall behind," I anxiously asked her. "Has your leg been cast yet? Does it still hurt?" "It's casted and it doesn't hurt anymore, but I can barely walk." "It's okay. Just come to school. I'll sit with you. I can take care of you if anything happens." "Huh? But will Big Brother agree to you changing seats? You two have been sitting together for 2 years already." "It's fine. Student Tate hasn't come to class for 3 days already. Tomorrow I'll just let the teacher know. Anyway, I don't have a deskmate now." Lily Chen gave a loud sniff and said emotionally, "Annie Carter, you're truly the best friend in the world." The next day, Ryan Tate returned to school, only to face an empty seat, while I had already moved to the other side of the classroom. When our eyes met, he didn't say a word, just stared at me with a dark, profound gaze, like a bottomless abyss. If I wasn't mistaken, I could even see a glint of murderous intent in his eyes. Sitting next to me, Lily Chen subtly shivered and whispered, "Annie Carter, Big Brother's gaze makes me feel like he wants to kill me. I gently patted her back to comfort her. No way. You must be mistaken. In the following week, Lily Chen and I remained safe and sound, but Ryan Tate's gaze became increasingly resentful. One time, Lily Chen and I went to get hot water and coincidentally ran into Ryan Tate. He was with the group of male students I had previously seen in class. Now, he seemed to no longer want to maintain his well-behaved image. Everyone at school was still astonished why an excellent student like Ryan Tate was hanging out with a group of problem students, and even more surprisingly, these people seemed very afraid of him. As expected, Big Brother was still Big Brother. Ryan Tate walked ahead, with one hand in his pocket, a lazy yet unruly demeanor. We faced each other in the hallway. Our eyes met, and I immediately turned away in a panic, my heart pounding wildly for some unknown reason. Moreover, he seemed even more handsome. Ryan Tate's eyes darkened. Just as we were about to walk past each other, he suddenly grabbed my hand. "Annie Carter, are you afraid of me?" His voice was low. I was a little taken aback. "No, I'm not." His gaze settled on me. He looked at me from head to toe, then said indifferently, "Not afraid? Then why are you trembling?" I tried to force a smile. "It was just an unconscious reaction. I truly am not afraid of you." Ryan Tate raised an eyebrow slightly, his voice lazy. "Then why did you change seats?" I was stunned. Then I smiled naively and said, "No, it's just because Lily Chen broke her leg, so I had to take care of her." Ryan Tate looked at me, his voice very low. "When are you moving back?" So he wants me to move back and sit with him? I unconsciously felt happy, to the extent that I didn't even realize it myself. I seriously told him, "Lily Chen's leg isn't healed yet." Ryan Tate let go of my hand, his gaze still full of resentment. "Is she that bad? Are you her only friend?" Lily Chen, sitting next to me, heard these words and tried to retort but didn't dare. I softly replied, "No, but I'm her best friend." Ryan Tate looked at me, his eyes reflecting only my image. He irritably ruffled his hair, then glanced at Lily Chen, his voice somewhat harsh. "How much longer until your leg heals?" Lily Chen fearfully clutched onto me and stammered, Big Brother, rest assured, it's probably almost healed." Ryan Tate sighed helplessly, leaned down slightly to look directly at me. In the depths of his eyes, only I seemed to be reflected. I unconsciously tensed up and asked him, "Student Tate, what's wrong?" Ryan Tate noticed my worry, and a slight smile played on his lips, his tone very serious. "Deskmate, when she gets better, you have to return to your seat, all right?" I looked into his eyes and nodded gently. "Understood." A month later, Lily Chen's cast was removed. Ryan Tate personally came to move my seat back. He didn't say a word, just wore a cold expression as he walked to my desk. Under everyone's curious gazes, he quietly helped me pack up my books and school supplies, neatly placing them back on my old desk. I tugged lightly on his sleeve, smiling as I said, "Ryan, thank you." Ryan Tate awkwardly turned his head away, continuing to flip through math problems that I couldn't understand. A long time later, he finally spoke softly, his tone a bit stiff. "It's good that you're back." The relationship between Ryan Tate and me seemed to have changed, yet also seemed unchanged. He still maintained his cold demeanor as before, as if the person who that day had sat among his friends boasting about me, proudly saying how beautiful I was, had just been a dream of mine. Because now, you couldn't get him to admit it even if you killed him. What's more, now every time I looked up, I'd catch his gaze on me, but when I caught him, he would turn away, flustered, his ears burning red. If anyone else saw this situation, surely no one would believe it. He and I still didn't talk much, because most of the time he was buried in writing something. One time, I accidentally glanced over and found XX observation log written on the page. This was an observation log? Ryan Tate, him of all people, keeps a diary? I didn't believe it. I had never thought I'd be able to meet Ryan Tate's parents because they were the heads of a large corporation, and their status and position were extremely high. In fact, more than half the buildings at Mien City No. 1 High School were donated by them. I'd heard from some classmates who had met Ryan Tate's parents that they were very strict and immensely intimidating. I thought so too, because a corporation of that size certainly couldn't be led by gentle people. I had thought that perhaps I would never have the chance to meet them in my life, but who would have thought they would appear at just such a time? These days, I couldn't focus on my studies because my father had been fired. He shouldn't have been dismissed, as he had worked at that factory for 20 years. But my family had run into people we shouldn't have messed with. My house was located in an old alley, old-fashioned in style, very suitable for opening a business. A well-known, fat businessman in the neighborhood had set his sights on our house, wanting to buy it for dirt cheap. That day, a pot-bellied, middle-aged man drove up and parked right in front of my house. Accompanying him was a woman wearing a mink fur coat, who, as soon as she stepped out of the car, looked at my family with eyes full of contempt. "Are you the homeowners? Why are you so dirt poor? Move out quickly. We want to buy this house. You're just wasting space living here." She was the fat businessman's wife. My parents knew well they couldn't afford to offend them, so they only dared to gently refuse. "Madam, we are truly sorry, but we don't know where we'd go if we left here. Could you let us stay for another year? Once we find a new place, we'll sell it to you." The arrogant, middle-aged woman immediately changed her expression and turned fierce. "I don't have time to wait. Get out now!" My mother frowned. "You're being truly unreasonable. This is our house, and it's our right whether we want to sell it or not. There's no such thing as forcing people to sell their homes." The woman scoffed, her tone full of mockery. "How can you dirt-poor people deserve to live here? This neighborhood will soon be developed by a large corporation. You don't deserve to be here." I couldn't hold back anymore and said sternly, "Ma'am, please understand this clearly. This is our house." Her face darkened. "You dare call me ma'am? So you're not selling, are you? Fine, don't you dare regret it. The day will come when you'll beg us to buy it." After that, she angrily stormed off. Not long after, my father was fired from the factory. He had worked there for 20 years, but simply because that businessman was a friend of the director, with just one word, my father was immediately dismissed. My family lost its sole source of income. My father looked significantly older overnight, but when he saw me, he still forced a smile and patted my head. "My Annie, don't worry. I'll figure something out. You just need to focus on your studies." Chapter 12. Tap. A pen lightly tapped my head. I snapped back to reality, immediately faced with Ryan Tate's handsome face. He raised an eyebrow, propped his chin in his hand, and looked at me. "Annie, you've been too distracted lately." I didn't dare to look him directly in the eyes, just bowed my head, pretending to be engrossed in reading. "No, I haven't." Ryan Tate narrowed his eyes, quietly observing me, his tone certain. "You're hiding something from me." I immediately denied it. "No, I'm not. What reason would I have to hide anything from you?" He didn't ask further, just quietly looked at me, his gaze deep. Then he gave a faint, cold smile, his eyes growing even darker. "Good then." I thought this matter had passed, but unexpectedly the next day he came all the way to my house. At that time, that couple came again. This time, they even brought along the factory director who had fired my father. This time, my mother still politely invited them into the house, while they remained arrogant, bluntly making things difficult. My mother, for the sake of our lives, humbled herself again and again, but I could only stand there powerless, unable to do anything. I had clearly promised to give my parents a better life, but now I could only clench my hands to keep calm. Just when I could barely hold back anymore, my collar was suddenly pulled back by someone. Startled, I looked up and saw it was Ryan Tate, his face carrying a cold smile. He gave a faint, mocking smile. "Annie, you're really something, aren't you? Daring to hide such a big matter from me." At this moment, the arrogant middle-aged woman was still eating melon seeds and carelessly tossing the shells onto the floor, her tone full of derision. The fat businessman who wanted to buy my house sat on a chair, drinking tea, his face triumphant. "Old Carter, if you had sold your house earlier, you wouldn't have lost your job. I gave you a chance, but you didn't appreciate it. You really are—" Thwack! He hadn't even finished his sentence when Ryan Tate kicked him flying to the ground. The entire room fell silent. The businessman shouted in surprise, "Who the hell are you?" The arrogant middle-aged woman rushed over in a panic to help her husband, screaming, "You dare hit my husband? You're dead for sure. You're really finished." Ryan Tate put his hands in his pockets, his tone indifferent. "I know you're in a hurry, but calm down. Don't be too impatient." Less than 10 minutes later, a long line of luxury cars appeared in front of my house. The sleek luxury car at the front pulled to a stop, and a distinguished man and an elegant woman stepped out. They both possessed truly exceptional appearances. Before she even reached us, the woman pulled off her sunglasses, her voice resonating loudly. "Who dares bully my Annie Carter? Do they have a death wish?" As she spoke, she strode over to me, took a few steps back, then clasped my hands, her eyes full of affection. "This must be Annie Carter? Oh my goodness, I finally get to meet you. You're such a sweet girl. I've read about you in Ryan's observation diary, and you're even sweeter than he described. The moment I saw you, my heart just melted." She was about to say more, but Ryan Tate coughed once. "Mom, don't forget the main point." "Oh, right." She slapped her forehead, then turned back to pat my shoulder, her voice full of conviction. "Annie, don't be afraid. I will help you get justice." After that, she strode towards my parents, who were standing frozen, afraid to move. The man accompanying her nodded slightly at me, his gaze incredibly friendly. I quietly asked Ryan Tate, "Who are they?" His gaze became uncomfortable, and he slowly replied, "My parents." My eyes widened. Ryan Tate's parents? How were they nothing like the rumors? Mrs. Tate, Ryan's mother, excitedly clasped my parents' hands, greeting them cheerfully. "Hello, both of you." "Oh wait, hello, big brother and sister. How are you both?" My mother was still stunned, her entire body stiff, answering dazedly. "Hello. Hello, ma'am." Mrs. Tate patted my mother's hand, smiling radiantly. "Dear, don't worry. Leave everything here to me. I'll sort it out cleanly for you." With that, she pushed my mother aside, her expression immediately changing as her sharp gaze fixed on the middle-aged couple. "Are you two trying to steal my Annie Carter's home?" Her voice was so cold that the temperature in the room seemed to drop by several degrees. Just moments ago, she was laughing and chatting happily with my parents, but now, the aura of a powerful businesswoman was fully revealed. The pressure emanating from her made no one dare to breathe loudly. The arrogant, middle-aged woman swallowed hard, her entire body stiffened. She had never imagined that the chairwoman of Tate Corporation would come to protect such a small family. If she had known this sooner, even with 10 times the courage, she wouldn't have dared to utter a peep. Because the corporation planning to develop this neighborhood was precisely Tate Corporation. Furthermore, more than half of Mian City's economy was in the hands of this corporation. Her husband, the fat businessman, who had just been kicked down, now had an ashen face and stiffened, not daring to utter a word. The factory director, who had fired my father, hurriedly shoved the middle-aged couple aside, offered a fawning smile, and bowed respectfully as he greeted them. "Chairwoman Tate, Mrs. Tate, this is just a misunderstanding. It's entirely a misunderstanding. We weren't stealing their house, we were buying it. They wanted to sell their house to us." Mrs. Tate glanced at him, her face full of disgust, her voice contemptuous. "Who are you to speak to me? You're not worthy. You're the director who fired my Annie Carter's father, aren't you?" The factory director hurriedly waved his hands, stammering, No, Mr. Carter misunderstood. I didn't fire him. He can return to work immediately tomorrow." Mrs. Tate calmly smoothed her hair, then took a stack of documents from the secretary beside her. She flipped through a few pages, then said indifferently, "Mr. Carter will certainly return to work, but as for you, there's no need. This factory now belongs to our corporation." As soon as the words left her lips, the entire room fell into dead silence. She lightly patted my father's shoulder, then placed the stack of documents into his hand, her voice cheerful, as if announcing something perfectly normal. "Mr. Carter, from tomorrow, you are the director of this factory." My father froze, completely unable to believe his ears. For so many years, his skills were the best in the factory, but due to a lack of connections, he was always suppressed. Despite dedicating his entire life, he never achieved the position he deserved. Yet now, what he had strived for his entire life, what he never obtained, suddenly fell into his lap, unbelievably easy. While the arrogant middle-aged woman was still dazed, not understanding what was happening, Mrs. Tate calmly looked over at her, her tone lazy yet full of menace. As for you two, I hear you two own a livestock farm. Tomorrow, I'll send excavators to clear that place for you. As soon as they heard this, the three immediately turned pale, their limbs trembling, their bodies collapsing into the chairs. One moment they were arrogantly yelling at my parents, the next they were so terrified they didn't dare utter a sound. The arrogant middle-aged woman tried to open her mouth to cry and beg, but an icy glare from Mrs. Tate immediately prompted 2 bodyguards to cover her mouth and drag all 3 out. I stared fixedly at this scene. My mind hadn't quite processed what happened. I looked up at Ryan Tate, my eyes sparkling. Deskmate Ryan. Huh? He turned to look at me. I blinked, my voice full of admiration. Your mom, she's just too cool. After everything was settled, my parents warmly invited Mrs. Tate and Mr. Tate to stay for dinner. They didn't refuse, even calling to cancel all their engagements for the day, and happily sat down to eat with my family. During the meal, Mrs. Tate gently stroked my head, her expression full of love, her voice soft. Annie Carter. Who named you? It's wonderful. It sounds so poetic. I seriously replied. My grandpa Carter named me. He never went to school. She was startled and asked, Why did your grandpa name you? I calmly recounted a story I had never told anyone before. Because when I was born, Grandpa carried a large woven basket on his back, walking from our rural village to the city, bringing our family's egg-laying hen. The journey from the village to the city takes over 2 hours by car, but Grandpa walked the entire way. Back then, my family was very poor. We had no phone, so Grandpa didn't know which hospital we were in. He didn't know the way around the city either, yet he went from hospital to hospital searching for us. He had been hunched over from a lifetime of farming, but he still walked like that, just to meet me once. My father asked Grandpa to name me. He thought for a very long time, and finally said, Let's name her Annie Carter. He said it was because I was the only and most precious treasure in this world. This was the first time I had ever told this story to anyone. The entire room suddenly fell silent. Mr. Tate was tearing up, and Mrs. Tate dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Oh my, that's so touching. Then she glared at Ryan Tate, her voice full of disgust. Oh dear, her family dotes on her so much. How can you ever be worthy of her? Ryan Tate. Recently, our school organized a math competition. The student who took first place would represent the school at the provincial math competition. Achieving a good result there would be a significant highlight on one's academic record, immensely beneficial for one's future. Ryan Tate couldn't participate because he was busy with another competition, but I quietly clinched first place. When everyone learned that I, someone not particularly outstanding, would be representing the school, they were all incredulous. They said I was merely lucky, and that I would surely bring shame to the school at the competition. They even suggested it would be better to yield the opportunity to a student from the top class to bring glory back to the school. So many dismissive comments piled up that I even started to doubt myself. Was I really just lucky? But if it was just luck, then what did all those sleepless nights of studying count for? Clump? A thick stack of books was plopped onto my desk by Ryan Tate. He cupped the back of my neck with one hand, gently urging me to meet his deep gaze. His breath brushed past my hair, light yet warm. Scared? I looked at him, my voice, when it emerged, holding a touch of grievance. Yeah, they all say I can't do it. Ryan Tate subtly quirked his lips, his smile a little arrogant, yet the words he spoke made me feel more at ease than ever. Don't be scared. It's just a trivial exam. Anything you don't know, I'll teach you. Just go win first place and make them open their eyes. He said it so casually, as if I was bound to succeed. I looked straight into his eyes, and after a long moment, I nodded emphatically. Okay. And so, I did what I did best. I studied with all my might. As for Ryan Tate, he became my private tutor. Amidst the intense revision period, the school organized a basketball tournament to help students relieve stress. Ryan Tate represented our class on the court. His face alone was enough to make countless girls swoon, so when he played, the cheers almost echoed throughout the court. He was usually very cold and aloof, so this was a rare opportunity for the girls to cheer him on without fear of being glared at. I stood in the crowd, holding a bottle of water, watching him obediently. When his gaze briefly swept over me, the person who always maintained an icy aloofness suddenly quirked his lips into a confident, almost unrestrained smile, like a peacock flaunting its most beautiful feathers. The girls around me shrieked even more ferociously. The game began, and Ryan Tate played with overwhelming dominance, making it almost impossible for the opposing team to resist. I stood in the crowd, marveling that Ryan Tate was truly an all-round genius. Halftime arrived. Many people ran over to offer Ryan Tate water, but he refused them all. I had already unscrewed the bottle cap, intending to step forward and hand it to him. But before I could even reach him, a teammate snatched the water bottle from my hand. He was panting, his face flushed red. "Thanks, Deskmate. You came just in time." I wanted to say that the water bottle wasn't for him, but seeing how exhausted and tired he looked, I didn't have the heart to ask for it back. But right at that moment, when I looked up, I caught Ryan Tate's gaze, a gaze of utterly clear reproach. Before I could even explain, the game resumed. In the second half, Ryan Tate played with incredible aggression. He almost stole every pass, leaving the opposing team with no opportunities, completely crushing them. Everyone could feel the simmering anger emanating from him. Not only his opponents, but even his teammates were astonished. One person muttered, "What's wrong with Ryan Tate? Why is he suddenly playing like he wants to eat people alive?" Another wiped sweat from his brow. "Who knows? He's always cold. No one can guess what he's thinking, and no one dares to ask." At the end of the game, Ryan Tate made a spectacular three-pointer, ending all hopes for the opposing team. Only after the crowd dispersed did I walk closer to him. He wore jersey number 3, looking even more dazzling as he stood in the wind. "Deskmate Tate." He shoved his hands into his pockets, his voice a little peevish. "What? You heartless thing, giving water to someone else and not to me?" My eyes curved into a smile as I looked at him. "Deskmate Tate, could you bend down a little?" He narrowed his eyes, asking cautiously, "You tell me to bend down, and I'll just bend down?" My smile widened even more. "You definitely will." He muttered a soft curse, then obediently lowered his head. "You've got me." I took out a tissue, gently wiping the sweat from his forehead. Then I leaned close to his ear, saying seriously, "Deskmate Tate, you played incredibly well today. That last three-pointer was beautiful, truly worthy of my deskmate." My eyes shone brightly. Ryan Tate startled upright, the tips of his ears unconsciously turning red. Afraid he might be embarrassed, I prepared to leave, but at that moment, Ryan Tate held on to the hem of my shirt. His voice was a little stiff. "If you've praised me, then praise me a little more." I noticed that the closer it got to the provincial math competition, the more people gossiped behind my back. In their eyes, I was far too ordinary to represent the entire school in a competition. They felt I was utterly undeserving. The day before the competition, it was a Monday morning. During the weekly flag-raising ceremony, Ryan Tate, as the top student in our grade, stood on the stage, his gaze profound. The schoolyard, which had been noisy, fell into complete silence the moment he stepped onto the podium. Everyone was stunned. Someone who always refused to speak publicly, renowned for his cold and aloof demeanor, had suddenly agreed to stand on the podium and give a speech today. Classmates collectively perked up their ears to listen, and even the principal couldn't conceal his satisfaction. His eyes filled with anticipation. Everyone's gaze converged, following Ryan Tate's every movement. He gently tapped his finger on the microphone, his low, calm voice resonating. "Since everyone is here today, I'll say a few words." I once read a line by Eileen Chang. Outside the wind and rain rage, and all the mountains and peaks are but this very day. So, Annie Carter." He suddenly paused. I stood below on the school grounds, amidst hundreds of students, when I suddenly heard my own name echo from the microphone. My heart skipped a beat. I looked up, just as my eyes met his gaze on the stage. The corner of Ryan Tate's lips subtly quirked upward, his eyes brimming with confidence. "No matter what others say, you just need to persist in what you believe is right. Do whatever you want to do. Life is short, but it has countless important moments. I hope that in the most brilliant years of your youth, you can devote yourself entirely, leaving no regrets." He paused for a second, then his voice deepened, carrying a hint of a smile. "As for me, haven't people always said I'm arrogant? But I will forever bow my head for you." As soon as the words ended, the schoolyard plunged into absolute silence. Even the principal was astonished, and the teachers behind him gaped. Clearly, no one had expected Ryan Tate's speech to transform into such a public declaration of support. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, someone in the crowd yelled, "Holy crap! Brother Ryan is a legend!" The entire schoolyard immediately erupted. "Oh my God, did he just confess? Heavens, is this still the ice-cold Ryan Tate I know? Annie Carter is the one participating in the math competition, right? Big Brother trusts her so much, she must be extraordinary." I thought today would be a serious speech. Who knew Big Brother would turn it into a public confession? I wondered why Ryan Tate suddenly agreed to give a speech under the flag. Turns out he's a warrior for love. My God, I actually witnessed Big Brother descend to the mortal realm. I stood in the middle of the schoolyard, hand pressed to my chest. My heart was pounding so fast it felt like it would leap out. Noise flooded from all directions, but my ears seemed to be plugged. All I could hear was the thumping of my own heart. He stood on the stage, his usual cold face now held a gentle smile. That smile was like sunshine in the freezing winter, warm yet dazzling. It hit me. Oh no, I've really fallen for him. I didn't know when it started. Perhaps it was when he gave me water when I choked. Perhaps it was when he took my math problems and patiently explained them. Perhaps it was when he silently filled my thermos with water without saying anything. Perhaps it was when I accidentally saw the page where he wrote XX observation log. But it could also be right at this very moment. Because his gaze had long been etched deep in my heart, I stood amidst the crowd, yet I only saw him. "Ryan Tate, I really like you now." That evening, after finishing my packing, I stood on the balcony, letting the night wind blow against my face, trying to clear my head a bit. After much hesitation, I finally dialed a number. "Hello, Deskmate." Ryan Tate's voice came from the other end of the line, carrying a hint of a smile, completely different from his usual coldness. I softly called out, "Classmate Tate?" "Yes, I'm here." I heard the click of a lighter from the other end. He must be lighting a cigarette. I always knew he smoked, because he always carried a faint scent of cigarette smoke, but he never smoked when he was with me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, then said firmly, "I've thought long and hard. I want to make an important decision." His voice was slightly hoarse, seemingly holding the cigarette between his lips, as he asked lazily, "Go on." I gripped the phone tightly, then said each word decisively. "If I win first place this time, I'll confess to you." The other end of the line suddenly fell silent. I nervously clutched the hem of my shirt, wondering what he was thinking. Suddenly I heard a tss sound. It seemed he had just burned himself. Immediately after, his slightly trembling voice rang out. "Damn it!" I frowned, asking worriedly, "What's wrong?" He let out a soft breath, his voice growing hoarser, carrying a rare note of overwhelmed joy. "Nothing, it's just too much joy, so the cigarette burned my hand." I couldn't help but laugh. My mood also lightened. "You believe in me that much? What if I don't win first place?" Ryan Tate chuckled softly, his tone incredibly firm. "Deskmate, you are the student I taught. You will definitely win first place." Hearing those words, I suddenly felt my whole body brimming with energy. I don't know why, but he always had a way of making me believe I could do it. I took a deep breath and smiled brightly. Okay, I'll bring home first place. Ryan Tate and I were together. I knew very well how to seize glory, not only winning first place, but also using my strength to silence all those who had once looked down on me. Mrs. Tate, while feeding me a strawberry, beamed proudly. Our Annie truly has a bright future. It's her first time competing, and it's a provincial-level competition, yet she still won first place. Come on, sweetie, have another strawberry. I awkwardly opened my mouth, while my mother, giving me a massage, smiled kindly. It's also thanks to little Ryan's good teaching. Our Annie progressed so quickly. Ryan Tate sat beside me, occasionally breaking into a silly smile. This state of affairs had lasted since the day we got together. That day, Ryan Tate's eyes, looking at me, were full of emotion, as if holding back something intense. He looked at me, his tone more serious than ever. Annie Carter, if you're with me, there's no breaking up. I like to show off, and I'm possessive. So do you still want to be with me? I looked into his eyes and gently nodded. Ryan Tate, I like you. In that moment, he was so overjoyed that he spun around on the spot, then suddenly bent down, slipped his hands under my legs, and lifted me up like a child, ignoring the astonished gazes of everyone around us. He grinned mischievously, narrowed his eyes, and said, "Let's get married right now." I was afraid of heights, and frantically clung to his neck. No need to rush that much. From that day on, Ryan Tate started smiling foolishly countless times. His classmates didn't know the truth, and started spreading rumors that the school's big brother had studied himself into madness. Everyone said it was just one college entrance exam. There was no need to be so stressed. The college entrance exam approached. It was the final hurdle for all senior students. No one saw it as an end, but rather the beginning of a new journey. Everyone poured their heart and soul into studying, and so did I. Ryan Tate stayed in class late every day, reviewing with me until the last moment. As a result, I performed very well. Although I didn't get into Ryan Tate's university, I was admitted to a prestigious Key University. Fortunately, we were still in the same city. On my university matriculation day, Ryan Tate personally drove me there. He drove his flashy supercar, circling the campus again and again, as if afraid others wouldn't know I was his girlfriend. If he hadn't been stopped by the female dormitory manager, he might have rushed straight into my dorm room to help me make the bed. Being stopped at the door, his face immediately fell. What kind of crazy school is this? They don't even let guys into the girls' dorms? 4 years of university passed in the blink of an eye. After graduation, we entered society, continuing to pursue our own fields. A few years later, we got married. At 27 years old, Ryan Tate was already firmly seated at the top of his industry. The man who was once untamed and arrogant had now become a famous, smiling tiger in the industry, but everyone feared his smile that hid a dagger. In a meeting on the top floor of Tate Corporation, Ryan Tate sat at the head of the conference table, his fingers idly tapping its surface, a languid expression on his face. Yet, all the senior managers in the room broke out in a cold sweat, no one daring to breathe too loudly. They were seasoned veterans, knowing this was a clear sign that the young master was on the verge of an outburst. Lily Chen's husband, also present in the meeting, secretly messaged his wife for help in his desperation. At the time, Lily and I were getting our nails done. When I saw her pitiable look, I understood the situation perfectly, immediately taking out my phone to make a call. The moment the call connected, a familiar ringtone suddenly pierced the dead-silent conference room. The senior managers collectively sighed in relief. They were all too familiar with this particular ringtone. It was like a beacon of salvation in hell. Ryan Tate lowered his gaze to his phone screen. This inherently cold individual had the caller ID for the incoming call saved as Sweetie Pie. He quirked his lips faintly, stood up, and spoke in a voice both deep and gentle. "Hello?" I sweetly called out. "Hubby, can you come pick me up? I'm done with my nails." Ryan Tate's eyes automatically softened, and his terrifying aura vanished without a trace. The corners of his lips curved upward slightly, his voice firm yet tender. "All right, stay put. I'll be right there." The meeting ended. I flipped through my high school photos, my memories always lingering around the time leading up to the university entrance exams. One ordinary afternoon, the sun dipped in the west, casting a sunset glow through the window. In the quiet classroom, only the sound of me diligently working on my assignments could be heard, while Ryan quietly read a book beside me. He leaned back in his chair, a book in one hand, unconsciously resting the other on the back of my chair, his fingers occasionally tapping its frame. I paused my pen, stretched, and unconsciously poked my cheek with the tip of my pen. "Ryan Tate," I softly called out to him. He patiently replied, "What is it?" "Do you know the meaning of the Rose of Sharon?" Before he could answer, I continued, "It's gentle perseverance." Ryan Tate looked at me and smiled faintly. "I know." He gently massaged my neck, his gaze seeming to hold the warm sunset behind him. I whispered softly to myself, "Ryan Tate, my love for you is like the Rose of Sharon. No matter what tomorrow brings, I will still love you, gently and enduringly, a small memory." On orientation day at Mian City No. 1 High School, the roads were lined with cars dropping off new students. In the crowd, 2 tall boys stood out remarkably. "Brother Ryan, why are you even attending high school? Haven't you already mastered everything since elementary school?" Ryan Tate had his bag slung over one shoulder, chewing gum, his leisurely gaze sweeping over the new students. He let out a soft scoff. "I just planned to hang around for a few days, then casually ace the exams to appease my family and then vanish. Tell me to actually study for 3 full years of high school? No way. That'd be a complete waste of my precious life." I figured. High school is as easy as pie for you. How could you possibly stand to study seriously? The two walked and chatted, strolling through the corridor just as they passed by Class 11-3. Ryan Tate's footsteps suddenly halted. Near the window, a petite girl stood still, her expression somewhat dreamy. Ryan Tate raised an eyebrow, about to walk past, but then he heard, "Oh no, did I just drink someone else's water from their thermos?" The girl frowned, muttering to herself in a fluster. Immediately after, she looked up, facing a sweaty fat boy who was standing in front of her desk, blocking her. The fat boy flung his backpack onto the inner seat with a belligerent tone. "Do you know who I am? How dare you refuse me?" "It's an honor to be my deskmate." The girl pressed her lips together, her small face flushing red, yet she stood her ground firmly, refusing to yield the spot. The fat boy frowned, wanting to squeeze inside, but she blocked him. Her hair was tied in a small, messy bun, her round, dark eyes wide. Her whole demeanor was tiny and soft, and perhaps she didn't even realize that, at this moment, she looked like a bristling kitten glaring at the person in front of her. The fat boy wiped his sweat, his face puzzled. "Why won't you let me in?" the girl whispered softly, her voice like cotton. "It's too cramped. There's no room for me to sit." At this moment, Ryan Tate, standing outside the door, was frozen in place. His gaze remained on the girl, motionless. Only one thought ran through his mind. Damn, how can she be so innocent and sweet? So tiny, cute enough to die for. Oh no, looks like I actually have to attend high school after all. Thinking this, he unconsciously stepped into Class 11-3, his feet moving entirely of their own accord. His long, slender hand lifted, and with a resounding thwack, the fat boy's backpack was sent flying to the floor. Ryan stated coldly, "I'm sitting here. Move." The fat boy was indignant. "Are you crazy? I was here first. Who do you think you are?" Ryan casually swept his gaze over him, his voice languid yet chilling. "What? Got an issue?" The fat boy took a closer look at Ryan's face, instantly breaking into a sweat and stammering, No, I don't." The fat boy was rendered speechless, quietly grabbed his backpack, and fled. Ryan calmly sat down in the inner seat. The petite girl stood beside him, hesitating for a long time, then finally shyly extended her hand, her voice a little strained. "Hi, my name is Annie Carter. Annie as in the Rose of Sharon." He didn't shake her hand, merely pulled a thick physics textbook from his bag, maintaining his cool expression, feigning nonchalance. Ryan Tate. Ryan's companion watched the entire scene dumbfounded, his mouth agape. He started to step into the classroom, but the moment he set foot in the doorway, he was met with a sharp gaze from Ryan that instantly made him retract his foot. He pulled out his phone and messaged Ryan, "Brother Ryan, you're in the wrong class. You're a class 11-1 student, not 11-3. Get out of there, it's so embarrassing." Ryan replied with just 2 words, "Get lost." His friend continued to text. "Brother Ryan, what's wrong with you?" Ryan replied, his expression calm. "Your boy's in love.